Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. I am back, and this time doing a Doctor Who video. We've had a couple of milestones, March 26th being the 20th anniversary of New Who, when Doctor Who came back with the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, and April 3rd is going to be the 15th anniversary of the 11th Doctor's first full episode of the 11th Hour. So yeah, I want to do something really special. So this episode, it's going to be a rankings episode, and we all have our different opinions. You're free to disagree. Some of the reasons for the rankings could be for very minor nitpicky reasons, and it could change my mind in a year or a couple years or something. But yeah, sometimes it could just be based off the vibes. But these are my rankings, so it's my opinion. It's not your opinion. You can't have it. It's my opinion. So without further ado, here's 11th Doctor Who episodes ranked. Number 17, The Impossible Planet. This one is part of a two-parter. I get the vibe that people maybe think the second part, the Satan Pit, might be the better of the two. This first part is definitely, to me, at least on this go around, on this rewatch, was somewhat forgettable. It's hard for me to take Toby seriously. Looking at him, I kind of get Riddler outfit vibes, but if the question marks are like all over his face, I know they're not question marks really, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but yeah. Number 16, The Caretaker. It was really frustrating seeing the 12th Doctor and Danny Pink be so antagonistic toward each other. And, the 12th Doctor is in a time of his life where he still kind of hates himself for being a soldier, so they really blow that whole thing wide by having him hate anyone who's a soldier. And it's really annoying hearing him called Danny PE and just seeing them argue back and forth, and Clara having to, having to navigate between the two. And just, yeah, it just didn't feel like a fun watch to me this episode. I know that's probably the point, but yeah, it was just kind of frustrating. Number 15, Before the Flood. Now, bootstrap paradox plots can be kind of hit and miss for me. Sometimes they hit well for me, but on this go around, I don't know. I wasn't feeling it all that much. You do have the 12th Doctor narrating at the start to the audience, breaking the fourth wall, and breaking the fourth wall is fine. It's fun when the fourth Doctor does it. I'm sure maybe the 12th Doctor has done it in other instances I really liked. I do really like 15 being like there's always a twist at the end. I've never had an issue with that. And, the 11th Doctor turning to the camera, but here I don't know if it's because of how long it takes, this talking to the audience type thing, but it just kind of went on and on and on, much like what I'm doing right now, talking to the camera for quite a while. And yeah, the bootstrap paradox didn't feel like a huge payoff for some reason, maybe because of the execution, and yeah, it just wasn't vibing with this one as much as some other instances. Number 14, Journey's End. Look, I know some of my rankings on here are probably gonna make people hate me, but it's just, Journey's End. Oh, I will say I really liked the first part, the Stolen Earth. Yeah, and you'll notice that some of these are part of two-parters, so yeah, like three out of the four so far, so kind of incomplete, but yeah, I really like the Stolen Earth, and then Journey's End feels like more of a mess to me. The whole thing of the 10th Doctor creating or I suppose accidentally creating a copy of himself, and then that copy gets to be with Rose. The Doctor Rose relationship I was never super invested in, and this felt like Russell T trying to have his cake and eat it too. It just feels very fanficky to me. And you also have the Torchwood Sarah Jane Adventures Doctor Who crossover, which is really cool. But then by this point, I think we're at a point where in the year of 2025, some of us, well, I guess just speaking for myself, some crossovers don't feel as unique anymore. So it feels more interesting when characters come together in a way that doesn't feel so crossover, a giant comic book event heavy. Like I find that maybe now I appreciate when it feels more grounded somehow, and that could be a very intangible thing. But yeah, this episode it feels a bit messy, and I'm not really a fan of the consequence of Donna having to forget her adventures with the Doctor, which granted that gets undone much later, but it's still not really that fun to watch here. So yeah, Journey's End at number 14. Sorry. Number 13, The Curse of the Black Spot. I'd kind of forgotten that this wasn't as swashbuckling pirate adventure-y as the title might suggest. You have this twist with the supposed ghost and, this sickbay, medbay, whatever you want to call it. But the stakes just don't really feel there. The possibility of Rory being gone for good. I mean, that was kind of a problem in the 11th Doctor's era, putting Rory in some of those situations, right? Like too many of those situations. So yeah, that one's number 13, which I suppose is very apt given, Curse, 13, whatever. Number 12, Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. I am not really into the idea of Clara being the mystery box in the show. And I'll just say I'm also tired of when companions are treated as, oh, they must be the most important person in the universe ever. Gotta find out what their deal is. But yeah, she becomes a mystery that the Doctor feels he has to solve, to the point where he feels unconvinced that she's just a normal person, and he keeps interrogating her, and it's very off-putting. They almost fall off the edge of a cliff. And yeah, there are just moments I feel uncomfortable here. It was kind of interesting having those creepy vibes of like, whoa, what's going on in the TARDIS, and go through hallways and not being seen, and then you see like, who is this creature here? But yeah, I feel like it doesn't do as much with the premise as you might expect, or at least not as much that feels impactful to me anyway. Number 11, Boomtown. Again, the relationships in the early seasons of New Who sometimes felt like a mixed bag, but I do appreciate how in this episode, I'm not as invested in the main story, but I do like the moments where Rose and Mickey actually talk, and it feels real. It feels, they're trying to figure out what to say, and it's kind of awkward for them, but they end up being honest and being like, what are we to each other now, and what are our lives going to be? And so they do end up having to part ways by the end of this one. Of course, you know what happens with the characters later on. Like, I mean, why are you watching this if you don't know what happens? I did think that the Ninth Doctor could have talked a little bit more, instead of, after Rose says Mickey's leaving, and he just leaves it at that and is like, all right, soldier on, and they go on the next adventure. But that was also kind of the point of the Ninth Doctor, just trying to go to the next thing, not confront certain things, like maybe a different Doctor would. So I guess I kind of get it. Number 10, evolution of the Daleks. Now, like the previous episode I just talked about, this is also part of a two-parter. And again, I appreciate the character moments more so than like the main conflict, although I do really like seeing the Dalek action here. I really do appreciate that we get a moment where Martha is open about how she feels. When the Doctor looks at her, she feels like he's missing Rose, and that was a terrible situation to be in, for her. And yeah, I kind of wonder if maybe things could have been written differently. But I do like when the companions are able to be vulnerable and talk about what's going on. Number 9, the Vampires of Venice. This one has a fun moment of the 11th Doctor trying to show his ID, and it's like a picture of the first Doctor, so a bit of continuity there. But more importantly, Rory gets thrown into the adventure, becomes part of the TARDIS team. And yeah, I appreciate that. I feel like I'm saying appreciate a lot. That the 11th Doctor, after Amy tries kissing him and she wants to be with him, he's like, no, I need to remind you about your future husband, and he brings Rory into the adventure. But as things escalate, Rory is willing to call out the Doctor. This is an instance of that. And yeah, I appreciate when that happens here. And when other companions have done it in certain instances. Number 8, the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Some of the Christmas specials kind of blend together for me, or Christmas and New Year's, I guess I should say. But rewatching this one, I found it to be an enjoyable watch, and the stuff it was trying to say about family and trying to protect them from the knowledge, but you also have to be honest with them. The themes that plays with there, and the lesson that the Doctor learns, which is you should be with your family. And we get that little reunion at the end where he goes back to Amy and Rory after being gone for a while. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty good one. But there's still other festive specials that I might prefer. Number 7, The Star Beast. I like how, even though this adapts the story of a comic, it does things differently. The comic is more about the adventure dealing with the Star Beast, whereas this leans a bit more toward the relationships, particularly the Doctor and Donna, reuniting with her. And you also have Donna's daughter, Rose. And I quite like how the 14th Doctor feels a bit different from the 10th Doctor. He feels more mature and a little bit more vulnerable. And, he doesn't want Donna to die, but then they end up in this situation where he has to make her remember, and then there ends up being a solution for why she doesn't have to die. That situation is a mixed bag for me, that particular plot point. I really like how Rose Noble is a huge part of this story, but I can see how the explanation that the metacrisis energy, or whatever it's called, passing down to Rose, I can see how someone could read that as, oh, Rose is trans because of the metacrisis, instead of like that's just her, her authentic self. I feel like there are some things that could have been revised, go another pass through the script or the editing or something. Another controversy is the inclusion of the dead naming. And it's like, did we really need that? It kind of feels like it's there just to show how clever it is that the name that Rose used to have is a name that means doctor. But, I know this is a struggle that trans people face, and I'm perhaps not the best qualified to say how this should have been done, but it's definitely something that has rubbed people the wrong way, and I definitely and the criticisms are definitely valid there. So, yeah, this could have used some more tweaks, but there are some other enjoyable things in the episode. I like the overall look of the Star Beast and the ultimate reunion with the noble Temple family. I do think something that could have been edited is the fake out of Wilf. The Doctor asks about Wilf, and he is told he is no longer with us. And it's like when you say that, you don't think the other person is gonna assume that maybe you mean that he passed away, um, and especially after Bernard Cribbins' passing, I really think they could have edited that down so that it doesn't feel so awkward. Um, because he's actually somewhere else, a different location. Or the character isn't dead at this point. Number six, The Timeless Children. Look, I get it. Have heard the criticisms. It's too exposition heavy. It flies in the face of continuity. That aspect I actually don't agree with. When I watched all of Classic Who about 2013, I got to the Morbius, or I got to the brain of Morbius, and when we saw those faces, I was like, oh, did the Doctor have other faces prior to William Hartnell? And I was so intrigued by that idea until later episodes kind of said explicitly that, oh, Peter Davison is the fifth Doctor. But despite that, I always liked that idea. So when that revelation that there were other incarnations prior to Hartnell came about, I was really into that idea, and so I was very open to it. I know people have issues. This was prior to this episode with the fugitive Doctor's TARDIS looking like a police box, but I've heard people say, well, maybe the Chameleon Circuit recognized the 13th Doctor and so changed to a form that she would recognize. And it's like, yeah, I can buy into that, but I guess some people need it explicitly said in the episode. And like, I don't know, I feel like people could have more imagination trying to figure out how certain things fit. And I love the fugitive Doctor. I'm glad that she has another kind of an appearance in this episode when the 13th Doctor is realizing I don't know my whole past, but is reassured that she is still the Doctor. Something that I disagree with, though, is the idea that pretty much everyone on Gallifrey was destroyed. I don't really see the reason for doing that. I think it's more interesting if there are survivors. Like, I can buy the Master, this Master. I know that's another controversy. People really loved the end of Missy's arc, as did I, and then this felt like a reversion. But yeah, I would prefer if a future story reveals that the Master was not actually able to destroy everyone, because the whole idea of the Doctor being the one of the last of the Time Lords again just feels old hat. But I do really like the explanation that the Doctor turns out to be a foundling from another universe, and I don't really mind the idea that the origin of regeneration came from an earlier incarnation of the Doctor, and this shady stuff that happened. It really feels tragic and compelling to me. And you can again use your imagination, and you could think that, oh, maybe the regeneration limit was set to 12, or yeah, 12 regenerations max somehow. Maybe the Time Lords engineered it as such so that everyone would have a limitation. And yeah, like there are a lot of possibilities there. Like there's a lot that can be explored with Gallifrey on television. We've seen it explored in other ways in expanded universe media, and it's really weird to me that the TV show doesn't feel the need to delve too much into that side of Doctor Who lore. But yeah, overall, The Timeless Children, I don't think is a bad episode. It might have its flaws. Again, pacing might be part of it. But in the end, I'm captivated by the episode. Number five, The Pilot. This is a really great point in Capaldi's tenure where they're sort of rebooting, like doing a soft reboot, resetting the table. So we get the introduction of Bill, who becomes a new companion, and this Doctor has been teaching at a university for a while. And I really like their dynamic, their back and forth. It's a different dynamic compared to this Doctor and Clara. So I thought it was a fresh change up. I like the dialogue between Bill and Heather. So yeah, I thought this was a really good setup for Capaldi's final season. Number four, the Battle of Ranskor Av Kolos. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yeah, I know that some people felt underwhelmed by this one, but I really enjoyed this TARDIS team, and I don't know if it's because I watched that season pretty much all the episodes back to back, whereas people watched it week to week, and so maybe people built up their idea of how the series finale should be. But I enjoyed this. I like the discussion between Graham and Ryan about killing and what's right and what's wrong. And overall, I was vibing with this episode pretty well on this rewatch, and I also remember enjoying it on the first watch about 5 years ago for me. Yeah, 2020 was when I finally got into the 13th Doctor's era. Number three, Empire of Death. Yeah, I know everyone hates me now. I do understand the criticisms of this one, of how it feels like it went too big. Killing off all the characters that you wouldn't expect to be killed off. Like they're gonna come back somehow, and people were really upset about how the revelation of Ruby's mom played out. I admit the pointing at the sign thing does feel really goofy, but I felt this episode still felt like an epic finale to me. It definitely has some of the flaws of Russell T's past finales, where it felt like there was maybe some Deus Ex Machina stuff, but for some reason I was more okay with the stuff that happened in this one. I can't really put my finger on it, but I thought the doctor's speech against Sutek, about life and death, I thought that was a really powerful delivery right there. And I know there's an awkward moment where the 15th Doctor refers to the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane as if they're like other people. He says they traveled in the TARDIS, but on this rewatch, I noticed he immediately says afterward, "That's how I met Mel" or something like that. So it kind of reads like a very abbreviated, roundabout way of saying I used to travel in the TARDIS with Sarah Jane, and that's also how I met Mel, and how he is with Ruby now. But yeah, it doesn't feel as awkward of wording now. But yeah, I really enjoy the reunion between Ruby and her mother, going against the doctor's advice of maybe it's a bad idea, and maybe this inspires him. And I really do hope that he does reunite with Susan in the near future, because that was a tease throughout the season. And as the season progressed, some of us are like, oh, it's gonna be a fake out, isn't it? And I would love to see Susan come back to the show. It just I don't know why you would tease that and then have it not happen when it feels like such an interesting idea to explore. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a pretty good finale. I feel like I bought in to the Ruby and 15th Doctor team more than some other people did. I guess some other people thought that the friendship wasn't as fleshed out, but I didn't see that there. I thought they vibed pretty well, and I totally understand the write out of, Ruby has her family stuff going on. She wants to spend more time with them, so it's goodbye for now. It's totally understandable. So yeah, I really like this episode. Number two, The Fires of Pompeii. This is a classic. It's really powerful. The Doctor can't stop the destruction of Pompeii. He has a part to play in. Huge dilemma. Donna wants him to save everyone, but when he can't, she wants him to at least save someone. She even tries to save a child, but then the mother brings the child away from her. And, I'm kind of in tears when I get to the part where she's like, please just save someone. And the Doctor, listens to her, saves Caecilius and his family, and assures him that Pompeii will not be forgotten. And yeah, the moment at the end where the Doctor and Donna are now worshipped as gods is a little bit cheesy, but you gotta remember the time that they're in and how their frame of mind would be in that moment, that after they've been saved. So yeah, I think this is a really powerful episode and a really integral part of the Doctor's journey. Number one, The Doctor Falls. This one has it all. It brings me to tears by the end. You have Bill having been transformed into a Cyberman, and it's really tragic. You have the Doctor trying to convince the Saxon Master and Missy to help him save just a small group of people. Small compared to like just Earth and 27 planets or whatever it was. I really do love this more than Journey's End. That one felt like maybe it went too big, whereas this one feels more grounded. And the Doctor, even though this is comparatively a smaller group of people, he still really wants to help them, even if things are pointless and everyone could die. Like, he wants to protect them for as long as they can, and that's the quintessential Doctor right there. He says, "Where I stand is where I fall," and I just love that speech. It's not about winning, it's not about hate, or it's about being kind, and it's something that I wish everyone felt. Just be kind. And it's really tragic that Missy turns down the offer at first to stand with the Doctor, but then we see that she is able to change her mind, try to stop her past self. She stabs him so that she triggers his regeneration. But then when she reveals that she's going to stand with the Doctor, her past self shoots her in the back, and they laugh sort of deliriously, because it's like, this is how we end, by stabbing each other in the back. And it's really tragic, because this really could have been a moment where the Master, or Missy, could have been an ally to the Doctor and really maybe redeemed herself for all that she's done in the past. And even though the Spy Master seems to come, in the sequence of regeneration, seems to be after Missy, I still think this moment is tragic, even if she doesn't die here, because this is a moment where she was open to turning good, and then after that is back to being evil, as the Spy Master. So I think this tragic moment, it still hits, and we see the Doctor and Nardole having a final conversation. Who's the stronger man, and they know that they're not going to see each other again. And Nardole, I guess that's Nardole's character development. ending up helping the humans despite acting like he's above it all. And you have the Doctor fighting against all these Cybermen, saying where they all get defeated, and he knows there's a chance that he could die. And when he gets blasted, he's like, "Doctor, let go!" And he blows everything up. Trying to, defeats the Cybermen for the sake of helping all these people. And he thinks he's about to die. Looks up at the sky. He looks upward and is like, "Pity! I thought there would be stars." And Bill finds him, thinks he's dead, breaks down crying. I'm kind of choking up just thinking about it. The music here is it's really effective. It just always gets me, and she breaks down and cries. But then Heather arrives and changes Bill so that I guess rearranges her atoms so that she is no longer just a Cyberman and exists in a way similar to how Heather exists. And they bring the Doctor's body back to the TARDIS because that seems like the most fitting place he'd be, where he could rest. And Bill and Heather are about to go off and travel the universe. And then Bill takes one last look at the Doctor and saying that she'll never believe that he's really dead because if he was, then the whole world, then the whole universe would go cold, something to that effect. And she says, "Where there are tears, there's hope." And then after they leave, the Doctor has these flashbacks to different companions yelling out "Doctor," and after everything, he wants to rest. He doesn't want to regenerate because, and I kind of, it feels odd because you would think he'd want to keep saving everyone, but after everything, after losing Bill and after Bill becomes a Cyberman under his watch, and after losing Missy, he never knows that Missy was going to stand with him. There are these different factors where I could buy into that he would want to give up after everything, and he's like, "Wherever we've landed, I'm staying," and he goes out into the cold, but is confronted by the first Doctor, which leads into Twice Upon a Time, which I guess I'll go ahead and mention is my favorite holiday episode of Doctor Who. That's another one that gets me emotional. So yeah, the Doctor falls. I can see how it could have worked as a finale to all of Doctor Who if they really wanted it to, but I'm still glad that we've gotten the seasons afterward. And this finale, it's still powerful as is. I don't think the stuff that comes after undermines it. It's still a powerful, quintessential Doctor Who story. So yeah, that's 11th Doctor Who episodes ranked. Every 11th episode of New Who, that is, even including the specials. Also, special thanks to my friend Dylan for suggesting this video idea. So yeah, rewatching these 11th Doctor Who episodes in sequence could be quite a trip because you go from Boomtown to the Impossible Planet to Evolution of the Daleks. You got these two-parters where you don't get the whole story. Then you go to the Fires of Pompeii, which works well as a standalone. Then you go to Journey's End, which is the end of that Doctor and Donna trajectory, at least for that time being. They get to Vampires of Venice, a very different look and feel. Then Curse of the Black Spot, and then the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. And then Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, different companion. Then the Caretaker, different Doctor. Then Before the Flood, then the Pilot. Basically sandwiching Bill's journey, going from that to the Doctor Falls, and then going to the Battle of Ranskor Av Kolos, and then the next finale, the Timeless Children, then going into the Star Beast, where you get the conclusion, or at least part of the ending chapter, the later points of the Doctor Donna journey, and then going to Empire of Death, the most recent finale. And yeah, I'm very excited about this upcoming season of Doctor Who. I don't expect it to be perfect, but I'm curious to see how things could be changed up a little bit. It's Doctor Who, and I'm gonna try to review each episode after they each come out. And yeah, I'm in this for the ride. Doctor Who is a huge part of my life, and yeah, just gonna keep watching, see where it goes from here. So that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in, and this is Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and I'll see you all soon.